Okay, next up we have Mags rolling on to our next awesome speaker. So another big round of applause here, folks. Gonna tell us everything that we should know going from junior onwards. Best of luck.
Okay, cool. Hello. This is How to Get Good. I can't remember my title. How to Get Good. It's about being a junior engineer. It's going to be great. I'll start with a bit about me. My name is Mags. I'm a senior software engineer and a web developer. I've worked in London over the last 8 years, and I've just started a new job here in Belfast, which I'm really excited about. I have colleagues somewhere in the audience. There they are. Hello. Hi, everyone. No pressure. I am a bootcamp graduate. I actually studied English at uni and then linguistics and went on to have a career in publishing before I ever learned code. So just a little reminder, there are other pathways into the industry. Not everybody takes the traditional route. I'm a mum to these two amazing little people. You're so, so cute. And I'm a first-time speaker, so please be nice. That's a joke because I already know you're all lovely. Okay. This is a short talk. I'll cram in as much as I can. The first section will talk about the impact on a team when they decide to onboard a new or a graduate engineer. Mainly that's from the employer's point of view, so what that looks like from the company. Then I'll share some tricks and tips to help you get the most out of being a junior developer and beyond. The idea is that if you take the context from part one and the advice from part two, that'll work together and you can sort of step into this career with a lot of confidence. Sound good? Yeah. Yay. Okay. So why does it matter? I'm going to just tell a little anecdote. So a few years ago, I was walking through our office and I noticed one of our junior engineers was looking a bit glum. So stopped walking, invited her out for a coffee. So I listened as she told me that it was too hard, that she wasn't good enough, that 90% of what she was doing every day felt brand new despite her training. She said she was exhausted and she felt like a burden. She worried that she wasn't delivering quickly enough, and if that meant she wasn't meeting expectations. Now, she loved her project and her team. Her manager was supportive and she had great feedback. But despite all of that, something about that role, being a junior engineer right at the beginning of her career, she really, really struggled with it. Years later, she told me that she'd been on the edge of quitting that day, and that having somebody who listened and offered a little bit of support was the only thing that stopped her. Today, she's an incredible senior engineer building cloud infrastructure for a company in Vancouver. And I'm just shook when I think about how close she genuinely came to giving it all up. And how close a lot of new engineers come to that line of never making it because it's hard. It is hard. Right. What was I going to say next? Yeah, because I remember feeling all the same things she did as well. And sorry, I'm just going to remind myself quickly. Yes, and I realize now that there's a disconnect between how I understood my role as a junior engineer and how I didn't understand whether I was making the right choices in my learning. So today, I'd love to close that gap so that the new engineers in this room never reach that edge, and that we can shift our mindset to a place where we're going to keep more of you amazing people in the industry, because you probably have a lot more potential and freedom in this moment than you realize. So let's dig into why we feel this way. New engineers are untested. They haven't spent a lot of time embedded in delivery teams. They can be expensive. You're being paid a full salary, plus all of the costs and benefits and taxes that the company puts alongside that. It can take a long time to onboard them when they need to be introduced to processes and workflows, which are brand new. They can impact speed. They can slow people down, especially anybody who's involved in coaching them or in their day-to-day tasks. And they can make mistakes. They will make mistakes. In my second week as a new engineer, I made changes to a production database. And my tech lead had to come back from lunch early because bug reports were coming in that the data on our front page was gibberish. So all of this is kind of like bad news Nobody ever explained this to me when I started. Nobody laid this out, probably because it's a little bit horrible. But they never needed to, because I internalized all of this anyway. And I think the fact that it was never laid out kind of made that problem a little bit worse. So if new engineers are expensive and untested and they can slow people down, why does anybody hire them? Yeah, this is a good point. They knew all of this when they hired you. Your company knew all of this. And not only that, the engineers sitting next to you, the senior engineers, the people you're probably looking up to, they were all in that position once as well. And it might not have been that long ago. Let's jump on. So why do they do it? Because new engineers are net positive. When they join a team, you get more mentoring and more teaching happening. Senior engineers get experience talking about their code, onboarding others, which are key skills for their own development. You get more documentation being written and more clarity in team communications, which helps everybody to stay oriented with the work. You get some fresh perspectives being brought in, ideas that might not occur to people who've been in the industry for a long time. You gain some bandwidth because you have engineers now who can take on the slower jobs, freeing up other engineers to do time-sensitive work while they do valuable learning. And they're an investment, because if you take junior engineers and you train them and you're a little bit patient, one day they will be great senior engineers who understand your processes and your tools intuitively. Right. So yeah, whenever you are tempted to stop and think about the impact you're having on your team, I would much rather you considered sort of this side of the equation, because I don't remember what I was going to say there, but we'll roll on. We'll just pretend it's going well. Okay, brings us to the tips and tricks section of the day. The first one I have is to reframe learning. So reframe learning as your main job. It probably doesn't spell it out this way on your employment contract, but your job as a junior engineer is to learn, which is great news, because if you're anything like me, you probably realize that there's a lot you don't know yet. Sarah Drasner has this quote on her blog. She says, "Technical education doesn't stop once you get a job. On the contrary, nothing in tech stays in one place, and the single most valuable skill you can have to remain employable over time is learning how to learn." Everybody around you wants you to level up. The more you can learn, the more useful you'll be to your team, the more they can start to delegate to you, and the less time you will spend at entry level. Which means that anything you can do to help you on your path to becoming a more competent engineer is your job. That includes coding, closing tickets, and delivering work. It also includes shadowing other engineers, pair programming, learning more about your users and your stakeholders, figuring out what your product owner does all day and your designer, practicing with the tools that your team uses on a day-to-day basis, and upskilling in your chosen languages. Because learning is the single best accelerator you have to progress at this point. My next tip is to be people-powered. Firstly, it makes work a lot more fun if you have those relationships around you. And because it makes it easier to collaborate. If you know the person who built the application your team is suddenly having a problem with, you'll feel pretty comfortable going and asking them for advice. And if a friend at work mentions a new project before it really gets off the ground, you might find yourself being embedded on a team which has a really high impact that can help boost your career. People like to talk about themselves and they like to help others. So give them that chance. They'll probably thank you. And also because connections generate luck. This is a weird phenomenon, but the relationships that you build now have a good chance of paying off in ways you haven't even imagined yet. So that sort of covers why you might want to reach out and get to know other people. That does have to be a two-way street. If leadership know who you are, you're going to face less pushback when you come to asking for a promotion. And it's going to be less work for your manager to advocate for you. So my advice is write the blog posts, present the show and tells, get your name out there a little bit. It does not take much to get your name recognized and build up a bit of positivity about your work. Leading on from that quite nicely, get great at comms. The best engineers I know are the ones who can communicate brilliantly about their work. From writing PR descriptions, to building clear and effective runbooks, to teaching others, onboarding them, presenting to wider audiences, influencing the work that gets done, and advocating for where your department spends its money. Software engineering is a communications discipline. You can be the best technical engineer in the room, but if you can't bring people along on that journey, you'll face a lot more friction when it comes to actually getting the work done. It's not on the slides here, but the Agile Comms Handbook by Giles Turnbull is an amazing resource for this, for anybody even a little bit interested in how to do comms better at work. Cool. So next advice is love your one-to-ones. I love one-to-ones. For anybody who doesn't know the term, the one-to-one is the name of the meeting you should be having with your manager about once every week or so. It's probably the only time in your calendar which is dedicated to you. So stand-ups and planning meetings, they serve the team, but the one-to-one is your meeting. And it is a cliche, but the more you put into it, the more you'll get out. Not everybody utilizes them as a resource, and I really urge you to do it. I want to pull out two of the points here. One is that you should be leading this meeting, not your manager. And the next is that if your manager hasn't done it already, create a shared agenda and add to it every week so you can keep track of what you want to talk about and the goals that you're working towards. Yeah, so please do try to take these meetings seriously. This is the space where you can ask for what you need. You can get feedback. You can get training. You can clarify expectations about your work from both sides of that equation. And you can track the goals which matter to you, so your career is going in the direction you want it to. You know, use this space to craft where you want your career to go. Keep a brag doc. It's easy to go from week to week. Pardon me. It's easy to go from week to week without realizing how far you've come. This is a mistake a lot of new engineers make. Julia Evans puts it this way. She says there's this idea that if you do great work at your job, people will or should automatically recognize that work and reward you with promotions, pay rises, whatever. In practice, it's often more complicated than that. It's a really brilliant article. She goes on to talk about how you won't remember everything you've done. Like, you think you will, but you won't, and neither will your manager. It can also be really difficult to see patterns and trends in your work until you see it written down. A brag doc is a super simple fix that will solve all that. It also doubles as a confidence boost. So on days when you're feeling a bit low, you can go back, have a look through, and remind yourself of all the brilliant work you've been doing. And it's invaluable when you start looking for promotions because you have a list of everything you've done and you can really easily prove your value. Okay, last piece of advice here is bin your imposter syndrome. So the first sort of section covered this. You're much more likely to level up your team than not. No matter what effort and energy they are putting into helping you get better, there's a really good chance that your presence is challenging them in new ways, which doesn't sound impostery to me. That's a really, really valuable role on a team. The next is that businesses don't make pity hires. I've been in enough hiring panels to know that recruitment is hard work. It's an investment of time and effort and energy. And the tools that we use to assess incoming staff, they're really carefully worked on. So you would not be there if you hadn't earned your place. The last one is that imposter syndrome was made up in 1978 as a way to explain why these brilliant women who were really accomplished in their field were feeling like frauds despite external success. Since then, it's been used to put the burden of feeling successful on women and other minority groups rather than addressing the systemic changes which caused them to feel unwelcome in the industry in the first place. So, in honor of International Women's Day, let's bin this one. The evidence doesn't stack up and it does not serve us. We want to put the focus back on inclusion, on the lack of inclusion, which caused those feelings in the first place. Double slides, great. Okay, just to wrap up, the time you spend at entry level is really, really short. Use it to build the skills which are going to prove foundational for the rest of your career and build the habits which are going to bring you long-term success. These are some of the references. If anybody cares to kind of click back or wants to know more, you can also come and talk to me. And that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions on that one? Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for sharing kind of the tips and tricks from both perspectives.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for someone from like a line manager perspective for kind of boosting your junior members of the team?
Gosh, that's a brilliant question. I think the most important thing is to have empathy. It can be easy to forget like just how challenging it is to be a new engineer, and that it was a throwaway comment about 90% of the work you're doing is brand new. But I really do think that's true. When you come in and you're new, everything is new. Nothing is muscle memory yet. So tasks which seem very rote to more experienced engineers or people who've been in the team a long time, let's not take that work for granted, because it is hard and it takes effort and practice to get comfortable and familiar with those tools. But yeah, just give a lot of pep talks and sort of remind people that they are valuable, and be really patient, and remember to explain like people are patient. The deadlines and the sort of structure which we put around work a lot of the time, that's not always helpful for people who are very new in the team, like working within a sprint and feeling pressure to achieve a lot within like a very defined window. Sometimes we need to remind new engineers to kind of step back from that, take a bit of a breath. The world won't burn down usually. It's just software, and we'll figure it out, and we're good at solving problems. So
Absolutely. Anyone else? Oh, up at the top. Okay, hang on. I nearly fell up these earlier, so I'm going to take this slow. A few people saw it. Would you folks mind?
Hello everyone, and thank you, Max, for this inspirational talk. I really admire you for being open and honest about those challenges that people face. I do understand this because I'm a speaker for those who are trying to switch to IT, which is not a commonality here in Ireland, but I'm from Ukraine. So in Ukraine, it's a high interest now because obviously of the circumstances. But I have a question to you. What do you think, from perspective of the imposter syndrome and from perspective of onboarding, how long it will take you to become like strong junior software engineer, like a year and a half? Because some employees tend to overuse this for the sake of the rates, for instance. So they would like to have someone skilled, but still have the minimum wage, and they would require you to have 2 years of experience and still judge you as a junior specialist. Thank you.
yeah, that's tricky. I would say, like in terms of advancement, or kind of how quickly you can expect to sort of move up. Everybody is different, and every company is different. They're kind of going to have, hopefully they'll have like published competency somewhere where you can look at a list and provide evidence against that checklist to make your case. Something I do always use as a bit of a milestone is, once you've been in a job or in any role for about a year, stop and think about what you can do now, the work you're comfortable with and the things you know, compared to 1 year ago. Because sometimes just kind of seeing the jump and the leap, like you don't notice it over time, but there can be a really, really big difference in terms of what you know on day one of a job versus what you know 1 year later. And I think that can be quite positive, just in terms of like boosting your confidence, but also in terms of if you're sort of wondering, should I be going for that promotion? Like, do I deserve it? Look at everything you've learned in the gap, because you will be surprised. You will be surprised. And, they were paying you that much a year ago, and look how much more you know now. So you're bringing value. So,
Okay, we'll do one more. Sorry if folks have other questions. I guess I grab mags during the break.
Yeah.
Just aware of timing, but
First of all, thank you very much for this talk, because that's the stuff I wish I heard when I was starting out as well, because you get all that anxiety.
Yeah.
Right now, what I'm hearing from people trying to get their first job as a junior engineer, it's very difficult, and many people are waiting a year even to get that opportunity.
Yeah.
On the company side, I'm seeing people just want to hire seniors or up. I don't think that's the right thing to do. As I think we all agree here. Do you have any advice in making the case to companies to like why you should hire juniors and like really framing it for them?
Yeah, I do. It was actually this was years ago, but a principal engineer said this to me, and it stuck with me so much. I was asking her like, oh well, how do we get more senior women in the company? And she was very frustrated at the moment because she'd been involved in recruitment, and she said, we hire junior women, and you wait 2 years. Because, you can struggle, you can spend years like trying to bring in the talent that you want at a senior level, or you can hire them with a bit less experience and you can give them that experience, you can train them, because then they'll know the things you want them to. By the time they get to that level, they'll be effective. And if you have that going as a pipeline, you're always going to have seniors coming in with the experience and the tools and the knowledge that you need. So, I wish more companies kind of understood that and took that on board.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay.